Hey y'all! Well, today we're going to do a follow-up on my trip to the Tampa Audio Show. And this was my first audio show that I've been to. And it was very enlightening about just the whole world of kind of high-end audio, I guess you'd say. And there wasn't a lot of budget stuff there. And I know this is kind of a DIY channel. A lot of viewers are kind of like me, looking at the lower tier of this stuff, and most of us don't have $70,000 to pay for a set of speakers or, $100,000 amplifier or whatever. But it was interesting to see some of that stuff there and to listen to some, I think they were $300,000 speakers and probably $500,000 systems or more. And it was interesting that one of the things I noted, there was a lot of what I call, or coin the term, audiophile sound. And probably about 80% of the rooms that I went in had this similar kind of sound that honestly I'm not a big fan of. And I talked to some of the exhibitors of the show that were tangentially related to some of these rooms, and I'm not going to get specific on the rooms, but I am going to give you a top 5, got an honorable mention, and then I've got the best of show. And that's just the ones I'm going to talk about. The rest of them kind of fall into the same kind of what I'm calling audiophile sound, which somebody with a different preference obviously is going to be picking different rooms than I did. But what I heard with this sound is there was normally a lot of really sparkly top end. Some of the rooms were actually missing even that. And then lots of crisp details on the very top. The upper mids were strong. And normally most of these rooms had a really powerful bass, but the lower mids were sucked out. And you could hear this specifically when they would play piano music, and you could hear this hand, but this hand was several dBs lower in volume. And it just didn't have that rich, warm sound that I'm used to hearing or I tune my gear to. And I mean, some of these were really high-end systems that had that sound. And I'm not sure if, I'm kind of relating it to when you go to the TV store, when you're looking at TV screens, they've got the display mode where it's all set up where it's like super saturated, high contrast, full brightness, so that it looks wow. And I'm not sure if that's the market that they're targeting or the sound that they're targeting, and that they'll get wowed by that. And there were several rooms that were clearly set up for home theater sound, which I get is a totally different thing. Home theater sound, you want that really powerful mid-range that's going to target the vocals or the dialogue in the movie so you can understand what people are saying in the movie over the background music and that sort of thing, and that you want the really powerful bass for the bomb explosions and all that kind of stuff. And you maybe don't want like super sprinkly bright top end, because then you're not going to be able to hear the dialogue. And I know a few of the rooms were set up for like home theater sound, even though this isn't a home theater show. And there were some 5.1 system rooms where they were trying to play music on 5.1, and I just didn't care for that sound either. I'm more of a good 2-channel audio sound person. other thing I noticed is some rooms really like move the speakers out almost as far as they could get them from each other, and it lost the sound stage and the imaging. It sounded like you were wearing a pair of headphones. And I know some people set up their home stereo like that. They like that super wide separation. I more bring the speakers in until you can hear that center image or the virtual center channel, and then move them apart until it disappears, then come right back. You know what I'm saying? Like, keep that imaging, and then have the system set up so that the sound stage goes past the speakers. If it's a good system, it's going to do that. You don't have to move the speakers way out to get a wide sound stage. And I blame that more on the setup probably, but I wasn't judging these rooms based on that. My judging of this was based on the tonal representation and just how lifelike and open and rich the sound was. And so I'm going to go over my top 5, and these are in no particular order. Don't think that I'm like, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I liked all of these rooms. And I'll kind of go over the price points and that sort of stuff and all of that. So we'll start off with the Audio Note UK room. And it was really nice, rich sounding, just well set up. And it was in one of the smaller rooms. And I'm sure if this system had more room to breathe in a larger room that had more room treatments, and I noticed that this room, they really didn't have like any kind of, bass traps or stuff on the wall, any kind of room treatment. They just put the system in there and turned it on. Or that's what it looked like. They had their field coil speakers. They had a 211 transmitter tube amp with a field coil phono cartridge too, which, if you don't know what that is, instead of having magnets, it uses electromagnets in the speaker. And clearly this was a super high-end system. It wouldn't shock me at all if that was $250,000 worth of stuff in that room. But yeah, it had a beautiful sound, and they were playing vinyl every time I went in there. They had a tape deck, but I never saw them play any tapes. I went in that room several times, and like I said, all I saw them playing was vinyl. And they played some orchestra music. They came back when they were playing some jazz. They played some female vocalists, and every time I went in the room with different music playing, it sounded good with all of them. So that was definitely a high point of the show, was the Audio Note room. And another room that really impressed me, and you guys know I'm not a Solid State fan, was the Rotel Mishi room. And they had their Q5 CD DAC with one of their big integrated solid state amps. I don't know, I didn't write down what model that was. And they had some Monitor Audio Platinum 3G speakers. And that room was very lifelike. The CDs sounded amazing. And I believe they were using the DAC in the CD DAC. They may have had an external DAC, but I don't think so. But again, I went in that room multiple times, and kind of, at the end of the show, I went like a round robin through all the rooms again just to make sure that I was hearing what I heard the day before. And anyway, that Rotel Mishi room was really good, and those monitor speakers were just super clean, clear. They had that rich lower mids that a lot of these rooms didn't have, which impressed me. Speakers were 17,000. I think the CD deck was 7K and the amp was like 8K. So not a cheap room, but it sounded better than some of the $500,000 systems on the first floor. So got to give them that. Next room that I want to give a lot of praise to was the Amphion Audio had their new Argon 3LX tower speakers, and they're just, little towers. They sounded amazing. And those were $7,000 speakers retail or MSRP, and then they had an advanced Paris A12 driving them that was another $5,000, I think they said, and that was it. That room was shockingly good for how simple the system was, and that was probably some of the more budget-friendly gear at the show, which I know some of us $7,000 speakers are a lot, but it really hit a nice sound that many of these rooms weren't able to pull off. So another room that had a really great sound, and it was a larger room, and it was put together by the House of Stereo, which are in Jacksonville, Florida. They had several rooms at the event. I think one of the rooms downstairs was more tuned for the home theater kind of thing, so not really my cup of tea, but this room on the fourth floor that had some, I don't know how you pronounce this, it's like a O with a slash through it audio. They had some Verdantes, these horn loaded on the top with a big woofer on the bottom. They said those were $40,000 speakers, and it was connected to like Syngistic Research, Wolf Audio Systems, that sort of stuff all connected to it. And they really did a great job setting it up. And again, didn't see a lot of crutches as far as, room treatments and stuff. They had a nice display. The folks there were super nice. And I plan on driving down in the future, maybe this summer, and visiting them and setting up a listening session with some of their gear and all that stuff. But yeah, it seemed like a nice group of folks, and they had some really nice gear there. And they've got gear that they sell at a whole variety of price points. So I'll put their link below. Super impressed with their staff and how good that system sounded. And they didn't fall into this audiophile sound trap. They set it up where it sounded rich, nice, lifelike, just super good sounding system. So rounding out the top 5 was Victor Kung with his Elicit room. And he also had those 0 with a slash audio. He had the smaller Icon 12 speakers, and he had his new push-pull monoblocks, these TU8888 Elicits with a pair of KT170 tubes and some new old stock tubes, and he was showing me, just super nice guy. And he was happy to see me. Here's a picture of us. And yeah, I had a fun time in his room. Again, just a really classic sound that is my cup of tea. And the tuning was great. His kits come with upgraded parts. They got Lundell transformers, and I'm actually going to talk to him about getting a pair of those monoblocks and say, just put whatever parts you had in it at the show, because it had some V-caps and, lots of nice parts inside it, and I want a pair of them for myself. He said that they use KT88s up to KT170s. He recommended the KT170s, even though you're not really using all that power. They make 60 watts each, which it'd be nice to have higher powered amplifier for possibly some speakers in the future that I'm looking at that may be a little lower efficiency, and just to have something a little different. Plus, people have been asking me about building some of those kits on the channel for you guys, and I'll do a walkthrough on building those. But his room, I swear, guys, it sounded better than the room downstairs that had the $300,000 speaker set up in it. I just had a really rich, full, lifelike sound, and super impressed. That rounds out the top 5. So my honorable mention, and this was the smaller of their two rooms that I really liked. And again, I think their other room, no offense, Gino, but the other room was a little bass heavy for me, and I think it was targeting maybe that younger audience that likes that bass heavy music. But the secondary room where he was showing off his new Torque DAC, and it had the small Neil Blanchard MLTL-4 kit speakers with his Torque DAC, and he was going through showing the different modules, and I'll do another video on that DAC. I'm actually going to drive down to his shop and going to interview him and his wife. If you've never met them, they're awesome people. And here's a picture of me and Gino. You can see, super fun guy. We had a lot of fun chatting about stuff, and like I said, I'm going to make a field trip down there, probably on the same trip that I'm going to go to this House of Stereo. We're going to go check out Gino Giselli's shop and look at this new DAC. Probably going to buy one. I've got that Topping Centaurus, and I've just never been really happy with it. I mean, it sounds good. It's better than any of my other Topping DACs and stuff that I've bought, but I think this new Giselli Torque DAC with the interchangeable modules is going to be a game changer in the DAC world. So, and I'll put the link in the description below. So, honorable mention, like I said, if their main room had the sound that the smaller room did, they would have made the top 5 and bumped somebody else off. But they get an honorable mention for this smaller secondary room with these little Neil Blanchard speakers sounding so good. So now, what you've been waiting for, the best of the show. And again, there were some super high-end systems. And this was in I'd say a medium-sized room downstairs, and it was set up really well. But it sounded amazing. And I mean, there were times in the day when I was like wanting to take a break. I'd just head down to this room and sit there for 30, 45 minutes just listening to music. And interestingly, there was no turntable. It was all streaming. And it did have Lampezator tube DAC, which was an interesting looking piece. And super high end, like had these giant pass mono blocks. I think they were 600 watt guys, just giant, sitting on the floor, and some other cool parts and stuff. But the highlight of it were their new Symphoria speakers, and they have a very cool layout. They've got separate bass traps on the back of the speakers with separate chambers for each one that are ported, and then there's a tube connecting the two, and they're isolated from the mid-range tweeter box by these ISO acoustic pucks. And you can move the upper section in and out to change the time alignment with the other speakers for your room. And they clearly had this thing dialed in. It sounded amazing. I'd love to own a pair of these speakers, but they're $70,000, which is, yeah, I can't swing that. I mean, maybe some point in the future, I kind of doubt it, but yeah, if I have a windfall of cash, that would be something I would love to buy. They do have a smaller avant-garde speaker that I want to go listen to, but right now it's not really something that I see buying in the immediate future. They sell for close to 20 grand. And he was telling me that they have the same kind of house sound that these ones that I loved at the show. I'm hoping that they have some of those at Expona, and they won't, have more than just one of their speakers there, so I can listen to some of those lower tier models and see if that's something that I might want to invest in the future. But for now, yeah, kind of outside of what I'm looking at buying, but they sounded so nice. And honestly, guys, hearing that system made me realize that it's time to build a listening room in my house. And I'm going to do a video about that soon. about converting my current living room into a listening room. So one of the things that was really nice about the show too was that it verified that the sound that I've been tuning my amps and my phono stage and color preamp and all this other stuff sound like what Audio Note tunes their stuff to. And some of these other well-known, well-established people. And yeah, I'm just not going to build stuff to that other sound. And, you know, there's people I know that like that sound. And if you do, just know that when you're buying a Skunkie Designs something, it's not going to have that audiophile tuning to it. It's going to have that rich mid-range and full frequency response that really pulls at your heart. And I think that's a good way of describing the two different sounds that I heard that were pretty distinct. There was like one camp and the other camp. And this camp over here, they call them the Audiophile camp, was designed and tuned around analyzing the equipment and using your brain, listening to the music to, you know, is this crisp? Does it have detail? Does it have good bass? Where the other camp over here was like, does this engage you with the music, and does it pull at your heart and your soul? And that's the sound that I want to get out of my gear, my personal gear and the gear that I sell folks and the designs that I share with you guys. That's what I'm shooting for, is to have an engaging sound that pulls at your soul and really engages you with the music more so than wowing you with some sort of technical side. And that's probably why I don't really care for some of the streamers and some of the solid state gear and some of the speakers that I've listened to, is they're tuned for this crowd of people that when they're sitting listening, they're analyzing the system instead of listening to the music. So anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up this video here. Like I said, had a great time doing the show. I'm kind of halfway considering doing a room next year. Not sure if I'm going to jump in that quick. May wait, you know, skip a year. I'm going to see if they'll give me a deal for being a first time, you know, exhibitor and being a smaller, not like some big Rotel group or some high-end audio company that has millions of dollars to spend, because I don't. And I'm not sure exactly what that would set me back to get a small room at the show next year, but hey, we will see. If you've never been to an audio show, go check one out. It was a lot of fun. I stayed for all 3 days. Got a nice room at the Clarion down the street. The rooms at the Host Hotel were like $360 a night. Half a mile down the road, which is walking distance, they were $130, and it was a super nice hotel. So, and I'll put a link in the description to the hotel. It's going to be a long description. I'm going to put a link to the hotel in the description. So, in case you want to go to the Tampa show next year, stay there. So anyway, it's a fun video to do. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Thanks to all you Patreon supporters, people that make donations at my website, people that buy gear from me, all that kind of stuff. Appreciate all you guys, and I appreciate all you folks that just watch my videos. This wouldn't be possible without you guys. So, till the next video, have a nice day.